a geek. Talking baseball every week. 'Cause they're Gleeman and the Geek.
And welcome to Gleeman and the Geek. Bring on the Royals edition. I'm John Bonus, which was daily with me.
They're here already.
I know.
I saw them.
I'm excited.
Oh, bring them on. They're here.
Yeah, bring them on.
Have them leave soon.
Yes.
Not that soon. It's Friday morning. It's drizzling out.
Yeah.
John's supposed to be the celebrity bartender at Target Field, the Gray Duck, whatever deck, in like how many hours? 5 hours or 7 hours?
Yes.
And it's not looking great for that. But
Rain was supposed to hold on, or supposed to end by 3. It's not going to end by 3.
yeah, weather talk on a podcast is
Yeah.
always good. But the Twins,
Nice and dry at the Gray Duck deck, however, and heat lamps. Come join me.
yeah, I'm busy. Sorry, pal. I'm sure my partner will go over there.
Yeah, well,
He's
I hope
never
so.
he's never that busy. I don't want to hear about momentum in baseball ever again. We've gone over this many years. What a crock of S it is.
Well, yeah, sure.
But-
Momentum is the next day's starting pitcher. That's the cliche,
Not
right?
even. Yeah. Yes, that is the cliche. They win first 2 at Yankee Stadium. Then they lose. They go lose 6 out of 7 after that.
Huh?
And then,
Yeah.
including 2 ugly games to
Right.
the Nationals, who are terrible.
Right, yes.
Or they're playing slightly less terribly since then, but they're terrible. I'm pretty confident that they're terrible.
They're terrible, too.
And then Yankees come to town. Twins immediately look pretty good. Win 2 out of 3, and then just
And why were they looking so good?
the starting pitching. But well, maybe,
Right.
yeah.
Yeah.
But the offense has started to come around a little bit, which we're going to talk about in a minute. But and then you go, ooh, they got a chance to sweep the Yankees, and then Maeda gives up 10,000 runs, and
Well, and
Clearly-
they also sit half the team.
yeah, that wouldn't have really helped though with Maeda.
Well, might have helped at second base.
Well, yeah, but that was Polanco's first game off.
Yeah, I know.
John, don't become a.
Listen,
rat.
all I'm saying, listen, I don't mind the strategy of it's fine to say rather than give one guy off every day, I'm going to give three regulars off in one
That
day.
wasn't
That's
even
fine.
the strategy with Polanco. The only reason he didn't take the previous day off.
Well, yeah, but
because
then
they
you
faced
also
a
choose the
lefty.
same day to do Buxton and to do Taylor as well.
Yes. Do you know why, though? Because it was a noon game after a night game. That's when you're always going to give guys days off.
Yeah, you give them just a lot of guys to give a day off.
Yeah, I think that whole topic is way overblown because an individual player in baseball, I know everyone loves to treat it like football or basketball. Like, oh, how dare you give 3 of your members of your starting lineup days off. It makes no impact on a given game.
I don't mind the debating whether or not it's a better idea to give 3 guys the same day off or whether or not it is different to give, one guy the day off 3 days in a row. You know what I mean? Spread them out a little bit. But when you end up as a result of that having Donovan Solano play second base after he was just a butcher at first base the day before, and sure enough, that second inning is just a result of
Okay, but then you're just saying Donovan Solano's not good. So
well, I'm
that's
just
a whole
saying.
different issue.
I'm saying anytime you come up with a lineup where it ends up putting Donovan Solano at second base, you need to rethink the lineup.
Oh, yeah. But I mean, okay. But Polanco was going to take a day off at some point.
Right.
Buxton also taking the
Yeah, but
day
Nick
off.
Gordon could be playing second base
Why couldn't he have done that anyway?
because he gave both Buxton and Taylor the day off, so he needed a center fielder.
Right, but Buxton has no impact on that at this
Well,
point.
whatever. You're also giving Taylor a day off because you need a center fielder.
Okay, but Taylor had a bad back.
Yeah. Yeah.
I mean, I'm saying it wasn't.
but-
I'm saying it wasn't strategic. Everyone
Well,
acts like we got to do this. But Polanco played 6 games in a row. He was supposed to take a day off the day before, but they faced a lefty, and they didn't want to bench him because then you would have had a left-handed hitter in the lineup, which people wouldn't have liked. Buxton is getting 1 day off a week. He's never going to play a noon game after a night game. I mean, he might once in a while,
Right.
and Taylor's got a bad back because Taylor's been playing every day.
Right.
There has to be days off at some point. I think that's
listen,
the thing. I'm not arguing with you. I'm saying this for the larger.
I'm with you as well. I agree. There's got to be days off. Like when I see guys take day off, I never. But I'm like,
But
Jesus,
also,
are we
John,
really?
the starting pitcher gave up 10 GD runs.
Well.
The second baseman didn't do that.
Yeah. The second inning,
It had no effect on
I don't know
anything.
how many of those runs in the second inning were were marked as earned versus unearned runs. But the first 3 plays of that, they could have been out of the inning before anybody was on base. And it was the entire infield was just a disaster.
Yes,
the first
that's
half.
because they gave guys days off. Well, then you just need better players at that point. I don't. It's strange to me that it's like, and I'm not picking on you. This is a thing people have constantly, where it's just like, guys are going to get days off, and nobody likes that, especially for some reason in baseball. No. But the idea, your point is, Donovan Solano shouldn't be playing second base. Well,
correct.
That has nothing to do with the days off. That's just not having a competent roster.
Well,
I mean, you know what I mean? Michael Taylor sitting out one of the first 30 games has not caused some free fall domino effect where you can't field a competent lineup for a day.
Well,
you know what I mean? Like Donovan Solano, he's been bad, but that's they signed his ass to put him in there. I mean, I don't know. It just seems strange to me. Also, on a day where the starting pitcher gave up 10 runs, it seems absurd. But if anything, that was the perfect day to give everyone days off because they were going to get bombed either way.
Well, maybe.
Should have given 2 more guys days off. Should have given me a day off for that game. That was terrible. But we're going to talk about Maeda. I'm actually in a good mood despite the last 90 seconds of me berating John for some reason. It's always good to start with a pointless argument. We'll do one in the middle, and then we'll end with a pointless argument.
We like to save it for the sponsorship, so you really enjoy the sponsorship.
Get you hooked. And then, they won their first season series against the New York Yankees. There's a team in New York called the Yankees.
Yes.
They have a decent history.
Yes. Mostly against the Twins.
I know that's a joke, but I did look up. I remember last postseason, whenever the Yankees got eliminated, I don't even remember who they played, but I looked up like their playoff record since whatever their last World Series was, like 15 years ago or whatever it was. It's been a while. Right. And I looked up the Yankees playoff record during that time, and it's like, it's a winning record, but it's not great. And then I separated out games against the Minnesota Twins, which they're 16-2 in the playoffs over the last 22 decades, basically. And if you look at the games aside from that against like non-Twins opponents, they win like 38% of their games in the playoffs. And I just thought, what would the reaction of? I mean, the Yankees fans are already kind of frustrated by the state of the team over the last several years, with Brian Cashman never gets fired and all this stuff, even though they make the playoffs every year, but they haven't made a deep run for quite a while. I just thought, imagine if you removed 16 wins and only 2 losses from that.
How much different does the Yankee legacy look like?
It's crazy to me. Right. They would have become the Twins, never getting out of the first round. That's maybe an overstatement. But with that said, first series win. So the Twins went 4-3 against the Yankees, which is not a big deal. It's not a big deal. You split 4 at Yankee Stadium, which that's we talked about it at the time. That's an accomplishment. And then you win 2 out of 3 at Target Field, even though they were probably outscored in that series. I guess maybe not because it was only a 6-run deficit. It turned out, but you finished 4-3, and that's it. They're done with the Yankees, which I tried to get Baldelli to talk about. The idea of, well, first I tried to get him to talk about the Yankees, and he was like, yeah. Then the next morning, Wednesday morning, before the Maeda blow up, I said, well, is at least do you view it as kind of a nice thing that you got all 7 games against the Yankees in April, and you can use it as kind of an early test or a barometer, and then you're done with it. You don't have to think about them till maybe October, and if you're thinking about them in October, that's relatively a good thing. And he was like, he looked me right in the eye, and he said, Aaron, that's what he calls me, Aaron, I'd love to give you some drama for that quote here. I really would, but I can't. And I laughed, and he goes, I'd really love to help whatever you got going on over there. That was his exact quote. And I thought, all right, that's fair. But then I thought, it's funny, like, that's funny. So many of the players, and we talked to Buxton about this, and Joe Ryan about this, and Sonny Gray about this. And they largely take a similar viewpoint, which is logical for 20-something-year-old non-Minnesotans, which is, what the F does Byron Buxton care what happened in 2002? Right. With a team full of guys he's probably never even met, and teams that he probably wasn't even paying attention to growing up in Baxley, Georgia. Like, who cares? But I did think when it comes to Rocco Baldelli grew up a Red Sox fan. Right. Yeah. He's from Rhode Island. The same thing. Right. He knows all too well, he's a 40-year-old. I believe he's 41. Right. He's my age.
Curse of the Bambino was a thing while he was.
He's my age. Kid, right. And so I think of my perception of Red Sox Yankees when I was, growing up. and a teenager and a young adult. And I'm thinking, well, yeah, that's all Yankees crushing them until the big turnaround, the 0-3 comeback and all that stuff. And then I think, well, but the one difference between Baldelli and like just a Red Sox fan is Baldelli spent most of his pre-Twins career, over a decade, in various roles, including as a player, obviously, with the Tampa Bay Rays.
Right. In the division.
With the Yankees. And if there was any team that, I'm not saying the Tampa Bay Rays like dominated the Yankees. I'm sure their record wasn't particularly amazing against the Yankees. But if there was any team that the players from that team would not be scared of the Yankees, it's a team that had 1/10 the payroll and constantly outperformed expectations and knocked the Yankees off plenty of times and made a couple deep playoff runs. And then, by the way, he played for the Red Sox team that went to the World Series. Yeah. So I do think there's a little bit of because I remember when.
But I'll also say this: if you ever seen a game in Tampa Bay versus the Yankees, like it's
all Yankees.
It's all Yankees fans. Yankees. Their spring training home is in Tampa Bay.
Yes.
So that whole area is just thick with Yankees fans.
That's why I thought he'd be sick of it.
Right.
I thought he'd say,
agree.
"Yeah, it's great to beat them."
Right.
No, he didn't do that. But there was a lot of the reason I noticed that there were a lot of Yankees fans at these past 3 games at Target Field were because A, there weren't that many fans in general.
Right.
And B, Aaron Hicks was getting booed constantly. And at first I was like,
from both sides?
That's what I was like, why are Twins? I mean, he wasn't great. He was, a disappointment, relatively speaking, with the Twins. But, it's not his fault that they traded him and he did well in New York. But then I realized, no, he's like become the 3 most hated Yankees at this point, as far as I can tell.
I can tell, yep.
Are Aaron Hicks, Josh Donaldson, and Isaiah Kiner-Falefa, which the Twins traded all 3.
I think you can also include Joey Gallo in that, even though he's not actually a Yankee.
Yeah, well, there was a lot of drama with that, actually. Joey Gallo, and I'm only going to say this because a couple of Yankees writers wrote about it, but Joey Gallo basically dodged the New York media all week.
Okay.
They came into the clubhouse, which is not super common.
It's very uncommon.
With a visiting writer. Once in a while, one visiting writer will come in. Like when Houston was in town, a couple of Astros writers came in to talk to Correa. That sort of thing. But there were, I don't know, half dozen Yankees writers waiting around each day for Joey Gallo. And at one point I said to him, good luck. I don't think you're going to see him. And meanwhile, he had a great series. Mm-hmm. And is having a great season aside from that little blip.
Including just like a couple of statement home runs, like the home run immediately after Miranda got hit by the pitch. Right. Now, I know it's a curveball, but that was kind of cool. And I thought the home run in game 1.
And then he hit it.
Great.
Yeah, I mean he's been fantastic. I mean he missed the time with the minor injury right in the middle of the first what are we at 26 games, but he's got 7 homers. Strikeout rate is way down. Yeah. He's played good defense at first and in the outfield corners. Although even he made a bad play the other day at first, but he's a little better than
that was part of that second inning.
Your guy Donovan Solano, a little better than.
I was so glad when they in game 2 when they brought him in as a defensive replacement at first base for the 8th and 9th inning, and immediately paid off with 2 scoops. Yeah, once in the 8th and once in the 9th, trying to protect somewhat tenuous lead.
There was even that great play that Polanco had up the middle on Aaron Judge's ball required that was a phenomenal play by a guy who just came off the IL for
with bad knee
problems. Phenomenal play, but it required a great scoop at the end by Joey Gallo. Yep. And I can't remember if we talked about this already on the Patreon. We do a midweek show called the Patreon podcast
where we already talked about the Yankees
a little bit.
First 2 games of the Yankees series.
Patreon, patreon.com/Gleeman.
And answered questions.
Commercial free episodes with guests and mailbag, and we'd love to have you join us. Talk about the first place Twins more than we do on just this show. But Baldelli kind of said, it's not a surprise to us that Joey Gallo is a really good first baseman. And I'll say this, like throughout spring training, he got a lot of reps at first, and they were pretty consistent in saying they thought he had like Gold Glove upside at first base. He just hadn't played a whole lot of first base because he was busy winning 2 Gold Gloves in the outfield for the Rangers. Yes. But Baldelli said, A, he's huge. He's a good athlete. The arm, which is phenomenal, is not as much of an asset at first, obviously. We saw that with Sano and Mauer and guys like that. But
It's totally wasted.
Yeah. Although
he's turned some double
he's
plays.
turned some weird throw to home double plays.
You are
and stuff.
correct.
But
and also some at second base, right?
Yeah.
Or at least one.
Through to second on one. That was nice. But Baldelli kind of said he's very good in small spaces, which is interesting for a guy who is massive.
Yeah, right. Yeah, right.
But they credited Jace Tingler, who's the Twins bench coach, formerly the Padres manager, and before that was a coach in the Texas Rangers system, was a player first in the Texas Rangers, and coached for many years a young Joey Gallo.
Right.
And Baldelli kind of said this offseason we were looking around and we knew Kirilloff was a question mark because of health, which we're going to talk a lot about here in a moment, because that's about to come to a head, I think, from a timeline perspective. But he said this offseason we were kind of drawing up a list of, who could we target at first base to be a veteran fill in there or provide a plan B if Kirilloff's not ready to go and all that, because we just traded Luis Ariz. And Jace Tingler spoke up and said, I know he's not in your head a first baseman, but Joey Gallo can be a great first baseman. And they went out and got him for a 1 year, $11 million deal, which was a polarizing signing, I would say, probably.
I think the worst thing about that time, or what made it polarizing, was the timing of it. Because it happened, it's essentially the same day that we learned that Correa was signing this long-term deal with the Giants, or a couple days after that. In fact, we found out that the conference to welcome Gallo was the day that they fell apart with the Giants, right?
Were you at the Gallo?
No, I missed that
So
one.
I'm standing in the clubhouse that morning. It was like Tuesday morning. It was some random weekday morning. And we're there to meet Joey Gallo, who's going to post for pictures and answer questions, and he had just signed his deal. And as we're standing there waiting for Gallo to come in and start our little press scrum, Derek Falvey walks in, and Dan Hayes says to him, "You see this Correa thing?" And Falvey went, "What now?"
Right.
And to Falvey's credit, I would have gone upstairs to my office. Falvey answered questions about Joey Gallo, kept a calm demeanor, shook hands and kissed babies and all that stuff.
They went upstairs to find out what was going on.
At one point, we were like talking to him just casually, and he was like, "I actually I got a meeting up there, so I'm going to be back." And it turned out, as he found out when he got more info, the press conference had been delayed and it never happened with the Giants, and then it set in motion all that stuff. So
so the timing of that was right after we had learned that Correa was signing someplace else. I think it was the same day that news broke. Oh, the Twins are signing Joey Gallo, and it was just like, well, that's just a terrible way to start a free terrible way to start your career.
I mean, let's be honest. Joey Gallo was abysmal last season for the Yankees and briefly the Dodgers. He hit literally 160. I know that's like a hyperbole. We say like, oh, that guy hit like 160. When we saying bad, he hit 160 on the dot. And just stylistically, I think the same people who were so incredibly frustrated over the years by Miguel Sano, even when Miguel Sano was playing well, and certainly when he was not playing well at the end, thought, we finally got rid of the number 2 strikeout guy in baseball history. We signed literally the only player who has a higher strikeout rate and all that. But, I'm hopeful that, and I got it. I think we were kind of on the same page where from just a pure upside play, it's easy to see why they would invest 1 year, $11 million in the guy. He's 2 years ago was an all-star. He's a 2-time Gold Glove winner. If they thought he could play first really well, which he has, that's even more value. But the idea of him, hitting 220 with 30 homers and good defense is, in a lot of walks, is not outlandish.
Right.
But at the time we were like, do they really need a left-handed bat? Because
it felt a lot like good contract, but good player?
Yeah. And now I just think, where would they be without Joey Gallo, who has provided the most consistent offense basically on the entire team? And the other funny thing, we were joking about momentum and stuff earlier, but they start the season, they can't hit a lick, but the starting pitching is just carrying them every night. 6 innings, 1 run, 7 innings, no runs, all that. Then over the last week or so, as soon as the lineup starts to kind of click a little bit, and it's certainly part of it is getting healthy, adding Polanco back into the mix.
I was going to say, it's Polanco and Gallo.
Right, Polanco and Gallo.
And Buxton getting
Buxton's been good.
Back from his
Miranda's finally shown a little sign of life. Correa maybe has shown it. But the lineup is putting together, not huge numbers, but I think, consistently better at bats. They're grinding out. They're pushing pitchers out of the game in the third or fourth inning and stuff like that. And they're breaking through for some home runs at least. I think they have 10 games in a row with at least a homer.
Okay.
And as soon as that happens, 40% of the starting rotation. Boom, down.
Let's dive into that as the next topic. Yep. After we talk a little bit about Grote beef. It's Grote, Grote beef. Mm-hmm. And we're having a meat raffle, kids. And let me just tell you what the prize is. 2 ribeye steaks, 4 T-bone steaks, 4 sirloin steaks, 3 roasts, and 15 pounds of 90% lean ground beef. Over $300 worth of value. I have had some of these steaks.
No veggies in there?
Oh, my. No, yeah. Have I ever told you the story about Riggs?
No, but maybe save it after the...
Riggs is his second birthday or something. Third birthday.
This is John's son.
Right, yeah.
John the 8th or whatever he is.
Yeah, right.
Riggs, they call it.
We're like, what do you want to have for your birthday dinner? And he says, steak.
Yeah.
And nothing else.
Yeah.
Because everything else is just... He doesn't want to have that other stuff on his plate.
It's just window dressing.
Or it's just he doesn't even want it. Like potato I don't want, broccoli I don't want, all that other stuff. Steak and nothing else. Well, you can win steak and nothing else from Grote Beef.
Riggs should sign up for this.
Let's talk a little bit about Grote Beef.
Eligible?
I should make sure he knows about it. Yeah. He would love it.
I'd launch an investigation if John Bonus the 7th won.
Fair point. I don't think Riggs is eligible. Yeah. The Grote family has been farming down in Nerstrand, which is near Northfield, since 1856. So this is their 6th generation of people raising great cows. I'm talking Angus beef cattle that are selected based on meat quality and tenderness, responsibly raised here on the farm on a diet of grass pasture, and then finished on grass and corn, and that's hormone-free and antibiotic-free. And you can buy individual steaks from them. So when you go to Grote Beef, GROTEBEEF.com to sign up, also just do a little tour. They've got individual ribeye, T-bone, New York strip, sirloin.
And they will deliver... Yes. Within 70 miles, basically anywhere in the Twin Cities. They will deliver directly to you.
That's right. You can get quarter cows, you can get half cows, all kinds of great stuff. So,
and if you just want to check out the website and join the meat raffle, you can see at the top of the page, I think it says like Gleeman and the Geek meat raffle. You'll be able to figure out. Yes, click that. But then, in addition to signing up for the meat raffle, which you might as well do, it's free to do it, any order placed over basically this time period between now and when we announce the meat raffle winners, you use the promo code Gleeman and you get 20% off your order, and they'll deliver it right to you.
I guarantee you order some of those steaks and have them, you go like, holy crap, this is different than the steaks I usually get.
Soda Stick is our next sponsor, longtime sponsor of us. Right. We always kind of say the same thing, which is anybody can just buy a Twin shirt and wear it to Target Field. There's no harm in that, but if you want to be the guy who walks through the concourse and have people go, hey, that's a cool shirt. Where'd you get that shirt? Inevitably, people are getting these shirts from Soda Stick. I see players wearing Soda Stick almost every day.
They like the jokes.
Right.
Like, they like the references.
The whole idea behind Soda Stick is something happens in a game, they acquire a player, somebody gets a nickname, something fun, some funny moment, and they're able to quickly do like a small batch of this stuff, but high quality, not just screen printed on or whatever. These are like I've had them do shirts for me, to do stuff. Becky's work thing had 40 shirts made by them, and they were all talking to me about how good the quality was. Right. And like, there's one I really like, which is the Tony Oliva hitting school.
Right. They've also got the TK batting practice one.
That's great.
That one is, they just got more in stock, because that's one of the things we talk about is this is a sign of small batch. They run out. I think they are literally getting more in stock yesterday. So go out there and take up that.
TK and his Zubas smoking a cigar, feeding the pitching machine. Exactly. You've probably seen the pictures. They immortalize that. And if you use the promo code Gleeman, what do you get? 15% off?
That is right. 15% off.
Soda Stick, soda like Minnesota, sodastickco.com, or just Google Soda Stick. Okay. So yeah, they beat the Yankees. They're 6-4 against the Yankees and Astros, which are going to be your two, maybe your most dangerous opponents or your most feared opponents. Obviously, they haven't done well against either of those for quite a while now.
It also bodes well in terms of the narrative about It's July and they still haven't won any postseason games.
Yeah, that's our favorite narrative.
right.
I wrote about that the other day. Like I said, we were discussing it. And I said, well, it's going to seem like you gave me the idea for this article, but it's written already. I saw a couple people on Twitter were like, hey, Twins Geek, good job giving Gleeman the article idea. But yeah, we always kind of mock this idea, but it's such an easy, and it doesn't make it untrue to be like, well, talk to me, when they win a playoff game. It's fine for a fan to be frustrated after 20 years and say, I don't care what happens in April because nothing has ever happened in October or whatever. But as we like to point out, they can't do anything about that for 11 months out of the year.
Yeah.
So if you take the stance that, every signing made in November or every walk-off win in April or every, trade at the deadline is meaningless because they don't come attached to a win in October, you're so safe in that criticism or that skepticism because literally nothing can be done about it. Yeah. But 2 points to that, which is like you just said, one is the only thing that you can come close to affecting that in April, May, June, July, and on is to play good baseball and defeat
really
playoff
good
caliber teams, particularly teams that have been hugely successful and have knocked the S around, knocked you around. And the only other thing you can do about that is make the playoffs.
Right.
And they're off to a good start in a bad division. They're on pace right now for 90-something wins. They're beating good teams. They haven't quite performed as well as you'd like to see against bad teams, Nationals, Marlins, etc. But they've so far won 4 in a row against the Royals. We'll see what happens after we finish recording this. But
I think before the 2021 season, after the Twins had lost 2019-2020, Rand Stew, who writes a satire on Twins Daily, wrote a story that I think on opening day that basically said nothing good can happen for the next 6 months.
Right.
Because no matter how much they win, you're going to be like, yeah, but let's see how they do in October. Literally, like, all that can happen is they can miss the playoffs, or they can make the playoffs. And everybody's like, yeah, but.
And I get like being so frustrated or beaten down by what's happened in October for that to be the case. And I'm not like criticizing anybody for having that viewpoint.
Sure.
I just think don't let your interest in buzz killing supersede your interest in baseball, because like the fun of baseball is, a World Series run is great. A playoff run is great. All that. But more than any other sport, the kind of, at least to me, the joy or the enjoyment of baseball is the every day for 6 months, having something every day to go to or watch or talk about or, speculate about or look up numbers for or watch video, all that stuff. And, the joy that comes with a team winning a division, going 92-70, winning a division in a close fought race or whatever, is that as heightened as playoff atmosphere? No. Is that as important to a fan base as winning a World Series or even winning a playoff series? No, but it's like little dopamine hits every day. Yeah. You know what I mean? Or little ups and downs. And I almost enjoy that more. Now, that's easy to say for someone who covers a team that hasn't won a playoff game in 20 years, because the enjoyment of that is purely hypothetical at this point. I forgot I was 8 in 1991. So, like, my memories of what a deep playoff run feels like is, I don't know. I was going to say I was still pooping my pants, but that's a little late to be pooping your pants.
I'm on the Power Trip Morning Show regularly on Tuesday mornings. They like to talk about their favorite TV shows, and I'm constantly berated because I'm not watching, Breaking Bad. I haven't seen Mad Men. I haven't done this. And I said, that's because every year I watch a 162 episode TV show that's on every night. Yeah. Right? Every night for 6 months. Yeah. That's the TV show I watch.
What I kind of
and each one's 3 hours. At that time, 3.5 hours. Right.
Well, and the writer's room gets a little stale with the Twins. It's like, let's have them lose to the Yankees again.
Right.
Let's have them lose in debilitating fashion on October 3rd. But that's why this year's a little bit different, which, I'm not going to sit here and say that going 4-3 against the Yankees is some huge meaningful thing, or that there should be a parade thrown or any of that stuff. But for change to happen, things have to change.
Right.
If you don't believe anything can ever change, well, that's a problem. But if you do believe, as I do,
Look
and I
at
think,
you embracing change.
well, not in
I'm
my
so
life,
excited.
just in the lives of
so
other people.
excited.
But like
the Twins are making Aaron Gleeman a believer.
Yeah, but my stance on this has always been, at some point they will win a playoff game, and I'll go further, a playoff series. Ooh, ah. So what has to happen between now and then is the question.
Right.
It's going to happen. It's an inevitability. And so to me, what would a season look like in which at the end of that season, they do break the historic playoff losing streak? Well, you're never going to know it in the moment. So you can never say in April, ooh, that win, I bet, is going to really feel good when we look back on it in October, because you have no idea. All you can do is enjoy it in the moment. But I will say that it wouldn't surprise me in whichever season they break this playoff curse that you do look back and go, oh yeah, remember they went 4-3 against the Yankees in April, and that, little monkey off the back, prove it. Proof of concept is what I wrote. It's
right.
against the Yankees and the Astros. It's at least showing we can hang with these teams. Now it's in April, but you can hang with these teams. So I don't know. That's been kind of my view of it. But pitching wise, as we hinted at, I didn't mean to get like so existential. Like about, I don't know why we're like.
I like it.
Yeah.
I like it. You're embracing change.
No, it's not. No. I'm embracing logic.
Soon you'll be trying
What,
different foods. I don't know exactly what.
Please, no. Please. Last year I was paid to eat cauliflower for the first time at the Twins game for our pregame meal.
Okay.
And it was there the other day.
Was it regular cauliflower? Was it deep fried cauliflower, or was that roasted?
It was like roasted.
Okay.
Terrible. But it was back again for the pregame meal 2 days ago, and the same people that paid me said, there you go, cauliflower. And I was like, well, the price is higher now because I know it's terrible now. I enjoy mashed cauliflower where they make it like mashed potatoes.
Oh, yeah.
Because I can trick my brain into thinking it's mashed potatoes.
I like it. I like cauliflower rice.
Yeah, I could go for that.
Yeah,
too.
yeah.
Big rice fan, so I could go for that. Yeah. Anyway, should we do more cauliflower talk or talk about Maeda and Mahle? So the Maeda thing, especially to me, the whole from start to finish over the last 10 days has been so strange to me because he's coming back from Tommy John. He missed 19 months, and spring training was, let's call it a mixed bag for him. But he actually looked pretty good in his first outing,
right?
Especially given the context of missing almost a year and a half. And then the second outing was shakier, but not bad. And then the third outing gets pushed back because he has some arm fatigue.
Yeah, you definitely just get the sense there's something going on behind the scenes that they're seeing. Whether it's arm fatigue or lower velocity or what, and that's happening in the bullpen sessions.
Right. So they push back his start, but then he makes his start, last Tuesday in Boston.
Right.
And
then of all the things to happen.
Right. He takes a 112-mile-an-hour liner off the left ankle.
Off the left ankle bone. Like you can hear the crack.
In the second inning.
Right. And
that was it for him. And he leaves the game. And immediately, even Baldelli said the other day, he couldn't stand in the hallway. Like we had to help him to the clubhouse. And I'm thinking, he broke his ankle. Right. That's it for him. Next morning, comes and he's like, there's barely any swelling. I'm good to go. And the Twins are like, okay, but let's wait a second here. And he throws on the side, and then he throws a bullpen session on Monday, and he's cleared to start. And it's strange that every step in that process, Maeda was like, I'm ready. I'm amazed that it healed like nothing. I feel fine. And every step along the way, the Twins, and including Baldelli, were like, well, we'll see. We still want to test him again. They were skeptical, which I would have been too.
Of course.
Then he takes the mound.
They've been skeptical pretty much for 2 months.
Well, yeah.
But they
18 months.
But they keep
trotting
him out there.
He takes the mound in the last Wednesday against the Yankees, the third game of the series after the Twins had won the first two. And to me, at least, it's immediately apparent he ain't right. Now, does that mean he's unplayable? No. But he's 87, 88 with the fastball, which even for him is no good. Right. They bunt on him a couple times because they know he's got the bad ankle. Mm-hmm. And on one of them, a bunt, push bunt towards first, he in position to have to field it, and he's actually a Gold Glove caliber fielder typically, or has been in the past.
I mean, the ball off his ankle, he managed to make a great play on.
Yes.
Right.
So he tries to make a play on this bunt, and he ends up falling, basically belly flopping onto the ground.
Yes.
And in the moment, it looked to me like he tweaked his back. Now, maybe that's me speaking as a 40-year-old who often tweaks his back, assuming that a 35-year-old just tweaked his back. Sure. It actually turns out, he said afterward, he had the wind knocked out of him because he landed on the ball on his stomach and everything. But, he stands up and he's just kind of twisting his torso and trying to stretch out and bending at the waist and all that. It's, every sign that you'd ever seen for someone with a bad back. But it was the same thing. Then even his warm-up pitches, he sailed one to the backstop to try to prove he could stay in the game, and they stick with him. He gives up 5 runs in the first inning, including some poor defense behind him, which we just bickered about in the beginning of the podcast.
Right. Including him falling down on one of those plays, one of the 3 plays I was talking about. Right.
You can't blame Donovan Solano for
that.
You
can't
Unless
blame
he
that.
put
That one was him.
He threw that banana peel.
I don't know.
Tripped him up.
That one was the
So he gives up
play,
5 runs, and when he exited the second inning, which is when he gave up the 5 runs, I think.
No.
Or the first inning.
No, it was the fourth. I think it was the second inning they gave up the 5 runs.
So when he comes back to the dugout, I'm thinking to myself, he ain't coming back out. Because he's clearly not right. He's throwing 88 miles an hour. I thought he just tweaked his back in a major way. The ankle, to the Yankees' view at least, is still an issue because they're bunting on him.
Yeah.
But he comes back out. He throws a scoreless inning, actually. Velocity's still high 80s, but that's not that crazy for him. And then comes back out for the 4th, and at that point, to me, he appears to be in significant discomfort. Like he's doing his arm stretches, he's doing back stretches. But again, it could be like a little bit we used to talk about with Michael Pineda.
Right. Yeah.
Where Baldelli had to finally say, like a year into managing Michael Pineda, I have to stop looking at his body mannerisms. Because he appears
He's
to
always
be,
uncomfortable.
Yes. We compared it to me dressed up for a wedding. If someone were to watch me all night, they would say, is this man in pain? No, I just don't like tucking my shirt in and I feel, fat guy in little coat. And that was kind of Pineda's vibe.
Right.
With Maeda, who's in great shape and a good athlete and all that stuff, it's different. But he, to me at least, clearly seemed to be in discomfort or limited. You could tell, I would argue, from the stuff he was showing and all that. And then he just gets knocked around again.
There's rockets now. Yeah. Now there's rockets all around. Right.
And near the end of the 4th inning, he's just flat out rotating his arm and stretching. And
they come out to talk to him.
Right.
They have a long conversation on the mound.
By the way, at which point no one has warmed up yet.
Right.
Which is, to me, I wish I had a clip of the audio in the press box where I'm just looking to anyone who will pay attention to me in this press box and saying, am I effing nuts? How is Brent Hedrick not what is happening here? What is he's now given up 5+ runs for a second time in 4 innings, appears to be in significant discomfort, and the bullpen is just tumbleweeds out there.
Right.
That's the part I don't get that at all. So finally, they come out to talk to him. Then
they still leave him in after that.
To give up more damage.
No. I think he threw 1 pitch.
Right. And then he starts stretching his arm out, and then
they come and get him. Like, okay, now that's it. Right.
And so then I'm thinking, well, that's it. We've seen the end of Kenta Maeda, given his history, given his age and all that. He doesn't talk post-game, which is never a great sign for a pitcher from an injury standpoint. But Baldelli says post-game, and working with limited knowledge there, obviously, because it's immediately after the fact, the back is fine. And then Baldelli says something that I can't quite grasp, which he said, in the first few innings, we thought his stuff was pretty good. And I just wanted to scream, what? Right. His average fastball was 88 miles an hour. Now, he was getting some swings and misses with off-speed stuff, but okay. And then we asked, what was the elbow problem or the arm problem, because we didn't know. And he said it was the top of the arm, like where the forearm and elbow meet, kind of.
Okay.
Which is not the area typically associated with Tommy John surgery. Right. And both after the game and even yesterday, Maeda, Baldelli, Twins officials kept stressing over and over, this is not directly related, we feel, to the elbow surgery, which is fine, except it is related to the elbow surgery. He missed 18 months, and now he has arm fatigue. And it's fine to classify that as arm fatigue as opposed to forearm or elbow soreness or whatever it is. It's not uncommon for a guy to miss 18 months, come back and start pitching and realize, oh, I'm not ready. Like, my arm is fatigued.
It's also not uncommon to have a bruised ankle alter your mechanics a little bit and make your arm feels a little bit different.
Tweaked back, or have the wind knocked out of you, or whatever it is.
Right.
Or he hurts his neck looking at all the rockets that he was giving up turning around. That's a Patrick Royce joke that I stole. But so he still, as of this show, has not been placed on the injured list. Now, he is going to be placed on the injured list. I can tell you that. He's going to be replaced. Well, this could change because now there's a second injured starting pitcher. But as of pregame yesterday, he was going to be replaced with Bailey Ober, a day or two from now, which makes sense. But just the entire handling of Maeda from start to finish, particularly given the specific context of him being a 35-year-old coming back from 2 missed seasons, basically, for Tommy John surgery, just the idea of who had just been pushed back because of arm fatigue, the idea of, him pushing to play through this ankle problem, going out there against, by the way, the New York effing Yankees. They could have pushed him back a day and had him face the Royals if they wanted to, really.
Fielding 2/3 of a lineup.
Sure. you SOB. Yes, John pointed to me when he said that. I wish people could have seen. Clever little John. I just got a glimpse of the John who probably got detention after school for pissing off his teacher or something like that. And, throwing 88 miles an hour. There was just so many red flags going up. And maybe I'm nuts with this, but I just looked at it and I just thought, there's some disconnect here that I'm not understanding, or there's a disconnect between player and team, whereas maybe Maeda is essentially just saying, I'm going to pitch.
If there's ever going to be a player on this team where you're going to have trouble reconciling little differences about attitude and such towards health, you would think, a person that is from Japan, where a very different culture in terms of when you play, how you play, etc., health, language barrier, etc. Speaking to each other. This is the sort of thing where there are already obstacles in sort of having that real moment, with somebody. They're coming from very different perspectives to begin with. I can see where there would be a level, and not to mention a veteran, who's
there's a level of deference that they're giving to him. That's how he got the 5th spot in the rotation, despite not looking good for most of spring training. And despite having Bailey Ober waiting in the wings and all that.
On top of that, you've got concerns about, you got contract, you got money tied into it as well, right? It's not something like he's going to get paid the same whether he's in the bullpen or starting. It's a significant difference for him. Now, maybe they've reworked that contract or something, or they try to make him whole a little bit based on that. But there's just so many different issues around it that it doesn't surprise me that this is a tricky, I guess, at best, one way to put it, situation to manage between the two parties.
I agree with all that. I will note that Maeda is very well liked. The idea of him as a difficult personality is not the case.
Absolutely not.
But I just think from all the stuff you described, and also just it could be as simple as, look, I'm 35. I just missed 2 seasons. I'm pitching. If I can physically pitch, I'm pitching.
Right.
And I wonder how much that played into having him make the Yankees start despite the ankle issue. Yeah. I wonder how much that played into leaving him into that game and
especially because he missed a Yankees start already. The Varland pitched for him
at Yankee Stadium. Right. I wonder how much that played into leaving him into the game after that rough first inning when his velocity was clearly down, and to my eyes, at least, very untrained eyes, he didn't seem right physically on multiple fronts.
Right.
To leave that guy in, think of how careful the Twins are with pitching.
Right.
How that's become almost a point of criticism because they're so overly bad. Right. They left a 35-year-old Tommy John comeback in to give up 10 runs. Mm-hmm. In what universe is that happening in normal circumstances? Yeah. So that's why I'm just been viewing this situation. Now, we talked to Baldell yesterday about it, talked to Maeda yesterday about it. Maeda basically just said, the elbow's fine, it's just arm fatigue.
Right.
Yeah, I don't know that there's a difference really functionally. Now, it's better than saying, oh, we took an MRI and there's new damage.
Yeah, right.
Now, there's no structural damage, so that's good. He's clearly going to go on the injured list. I would certainly bet the over on, a minimum stay, particularly because they have Bailey Ober waiting in the wings. Right. I just wonder, what comes next.
Although there's the rest of the rotation starting to drop like flies.
Yeah. So let's talk about Mahle here too, which should we do our next batch?
Yeah, let's do the next batch.
So we can keep pace here. Game Time is a sponsor we talked about for the first time recently.
I used it yesterday.
Yeah.
Yep.
To get tickets.
The
whole idea behind Game Time is it's an app, and if you're just kind of stressed out trying to buy specifically hard to find or last minute tickets,
right,
where you just have an idea, oh, someone's in town, let's go to this game, and then you think these are going to be impossible to get at day of or night before. Game Time, that's kind of their specialty, that they can help you hunt down the best price and last minute tickets or difficult to find tickets.
I'll also tell you for say Twins game. Also, you're looking for cheap tickets to get into a game. A lot of times, vendors like this, and especially Game Time, will give you tickets lower than you can get them at the box office, right? Because people have bought tickets, they can't go to see them. The weekend, the weather looks crummy this weekend. You still want to catch a game. I got tickets to the Twins game yesterday for $3. Mm-hmm. They were listed for $3. No, there's fees on there. It ultimately came up to about $10. But that's much cheaper than it would be going straight to the box office. Game Time app absolutely has that available for you.
They have deals on tickets right up to the day of the event. You can get flash deals, football, basketball, baseball, but also concerts and theater and comedy shows and stuff. And they have a Game Time guarantee that you'll always get the best price. So if you find tickets in the same section in the same row and they're less somewhere else, they'll credit you 110% of the difference.
Yeah.
It's the fastest growing ticketing app in the entire country. You can get pictures of your seat before you buy it, the view from your seat, which is always good.
That's on the listing, actually.
Yep. And it's always super easy. You get the tickets directly sent to your phone. So snag tickets without the stress with Game Time. You download the Game Time app, you create an account, and then you just use the promo code Gleeman, and you get $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, you create the account on Game Time app, redeem the code Gleeman for $20 off. Just download Game Time today for last-minute tickets, lowest price, guaranteed.
Our second sponsor is BetterHelp, BetterHelp.com. We're big fans of BetterHelp in part because we are fans of therapy. We're Twins fans. And also they are somebody that once you've made the difficult decision to go and try and help yourself with some therapy, you don't want to have to face all the obstacles that are in the way of that therapy.
Right. If you want to do a video chat, you can do that. If you say, I don't want to be on camera, you can do a phone call. If you say, I don't want to talk to anybody on the phone, you can do a live chat where you type to a actual therapist, a real therapist that can help you with whatever you need.
It's easy to switch therapists. It's easy to find a time for a therapist. Yes. It's more affordable than in-person therapy.
It removes a lot of the barriers for entry. If you just wake up one morning and you think to yourself, I've been bugged by this thing in my life. I really would love to talk to somebody. It can be difficult to set up through traditional means or methods to visit a therapist. You're not going to see one the next day.
Yes.
With BetterHelp, you can actually schedule something within 48 or 72 hours often, and you can tailor it to however you're comfortable doing it. Right. And they are offering Gleeman and the Geek listeners a special deal. You can discover your potential with BetterHelp. Visit BetterHelp.com/Gleeman today to get 10% off your first month. That's BetterHelp, HELP.com/Gleeman. Okay. Tyler Mahle. So now, an elbow is not a shoulder.
Right.
But we are back at the same place with Tyler Mahle that we were at the end of last season and all off season and coming into spring training. And I know me harping on his readiness and his inability to or unwillingness to sort of discuss this topic in any sort of meaningful way and just always say I'm fine. And the whole velocity readings thing, which I track so relentlessly throughout spring training that I know some people on Twins Reddit had a running joke. They were like, Gleeman doesn't even believe Tyler Mahle still has a right arm.
Right.
But the point of it was, he after they acquired him at the trade deadline in a significant trade. I mean, they gave up 3 pretty good prospects to get him. He made a couple starts for the Twins where he looked good. He exited his 3rd start throwing 86 miles an hour with shoulder fatigue, they called it.
Yep.
Sat out some time, came back, immediately exited another start with the same issue. And every time when we would talk to him post-game or in between games or even after he was placed on the injured list, by the way, he was on the injured list with the Reds with shoulder problems a month before the Twins traded him too. Right. And every time he would say, yeah, I feel good. No problems. A little time off. I'll be good to go. Right. You'd say, well, what happened to the velocity? Yeah, just didn't, ball wasn't coming out right, whatever. And it quickly became apparent that Tyler Mahle is not a reliable narrator in his own injury situation. And I bring this up because he looked pretty good for the first 4 starts of this season.
Right.
And he looked pretty good throughout spring training when he was peppered with dumb questions about velocity and shoulder stuff by yours truly
and
every
he looked
time.
Pretty good for the first few innings of
He looked pretty good for the few. Although looking back, there were a couple of he was throwing 94 and then he'd throw 90.
Right.
And then he'd throw 93 and there was a few little red flags there. And then he came out for the 4th inning and it was immediately apparent, he's 90, 91. And then by the end, it was 88, 89. Now he struck out the last guy he faced, which is amusing. Right. But was removed between the 4th and the 5th inning for Brock Stewart, who we're going to talk about shortly here, who had a great debut for the Twins debut. And then they announced elbow soreness, posterior elbow soreness, which means the kind of back of the elbow.
Right.
And he stuck around post-game to talk about it. And I should read you the I'll just read you the quote, I guess. I don't know. Let me
I can imagine how it's going to go.
Yeah. I don't want to misrepresent him.
Right. About how he's talking about
Tyler Mahle post-game. The first question was basically, when did you notice something was wrong? Uh-huh. And he said, in the 4th inning, it didn't feel great. So I think that's when we decided that we'll probably just take me out and be smart about it. It was feeling pretty good up to that point and then just got a little worse. Someone said, well, did you get an MRI or are you going for imaging, whatever? And he said, nah, just inflammation. No one's really concerned about it. So we just sit back for a few days, let it calm down, and should be fine. And I'm sitting there thinking,
I'm betting he's getting an MRI, first of all.
Yes. I'm just sitting here thinking, I've heard this before. This is the 3rd or 4th different time. First of all, he's made 9 starts for the Twins now, and he's left 3 of them in the early innings throwing 80-something miles an hour. Right. And after everyone, he gives the same thing. And I'm not ripping him for that. It's just his approach to injuries, obviously. Maybe he believes this. Right. I don't know. But the reason I was so obsessed about Mahle's status throughout the offseason, when people were like, what an amazing 3rd starter or 4th starter. And I just kept saying, how can you know? And people were like, should they try to sign Mahle to a long-term extension? And I'm like, how can you possibly do that? Mm-hmm. You have no clue his health. And even during spring training, I would ask him, how are you feeling? He'd go, I feel fine. Why are you asking me? Like, basically. But my thing with arm injuries is unless you can tell me what was wrong and or you can tell me what has been done in an attempt to stop it from being wrong, you're just flipping coins every time you go out there as to whether it will reappear. Now, this is a different injury.
Yeah, and I mean they have said, in terms of addressing things with the shoulder, it's not about a medical procedure. It's about reinforcing and managing
durability
and
fatigue and that sort of thing.
It's about workouts, right?
But I will be absolutely shocked if he doesn't also go on the IL. He clearly doesn't think he will need to go on the IL.
Yes, correct.
But, you have to. We've talked about this a lot with, the unreliable narrator idea. Buxton, same thing with his, I'm good to go. Right. Well, yeah, you watch him some days last year, he couldn't walk to his locker. So is he good to go? And I think that's one of the things that is so counter to the perception of Baldelli, this, Doc Rock, ultra careful, all that stuff. I'm not saying some of that isn't true, but he's dealing with in a lot of these cases, whether it's Maeda now, whether it's Buxton last year, whether it's Mahle now, whether it's whoever, fill in the blank. These are not moral failings, but there are just certain players who will just tell you, I'm good to go.
Right.
and you're in charge of the team, and the losses go on your record.
Right.
And if Tyler Mahle has left 33% of his starts throwing 85 miles an hour with shoulder and now elbow problems, and every single time he tells you, I'm good to go, I can start in 5 days, do you continue to do that? Or do you just kind of throw up your hands and say, we're taking this out of his power, we're taking this out of his hands?
Right.
And I think they almost have to take that approach with Tyler Mahle. I mean, now you've had a guy who, going back
they didn't take that approach with Maeda, and it seems very similar.
Right. I'm just the whole thing is now. Look, I also think
I'll be actually a little. I would not be surprised if he does not go on the injured list. Yeah, it's just. I mean, it feels to me like exactly the sort of thing you would put somebody on the injured list. You guys, listen, he's got tendonitis, or something like that. He's got some inflammation. Now, maybe maybe it's that simple. Maybe it's just he's got some tendonitis around the elbow, something like that.
I just even setting aside the injury component. How can you continue to roll the dice with a guy who a third of the time has to leave in the third inning and is not particularly effective in those spots? Now, he didn't get crushed here, but there were against Chicago, the second time he left last year, he gave up a grand slam before leaving. We talk so much, there's so much emphasis placed on short starts and all that. How can you continue to put a starter out there who it's a crapshoot whether he'll make it to the fourth inning?
Well, what I wonder about is I wonder if it's going to be similar to Maeda in that, we need him to skip a start, but we don't want to put him on the IL because then he's got to skip 2 starts.
Yeah,
right?
Or 3 sometimes.
Or potentially 3, right?
It's 15 days for pitchers, 10 days for position players.
Correct. Yeah, so the math turns out like officially that could be 3 starts, but usually
2 and
2
bump
starts.
back
Yeah,
a third one, basically.
Bump back a third one, right? You get an off day in there or something, right? It feels to me like they'd be like, well, can we call up, Varland, who, by the way, also pitched yesterday, so he's exactly on the same schedule as Mahle right now. Can we call up Varland for 1 day, do without our long reliever for 1 day, keep him out there? I mean, that, by the way, is sort of I didn't really thought about that. That is one of the sort of somewhat advantages of having a long reliever kind of built into your roster as a plan, is that it doesn't mean like, we'll just skip with a long reliever for 1 day and then we can call a guy up, send him back down and not put somebody on the IL, which I don't think was part of their plan or anything like that, but it's worked out that way a couple of times now.
It adds flexibility, but I just would say what I often say in these spots, which is to what end, to what benefit? What is the best case scenario there? That
he starts in 10 days as opposed to 15.
Right.
That's right.
And the worst case scenario is he sits on the active roster for 10 days.
Right.
You play shorthanded, and then either he makes a start and again leaves early and possibly makes the injury worse, or 10 days in throws a bullpen session and they go, actually, he's not going to be able to make the start.
I'll add to that. I agree with you, first of all, right? That makes no sense. That doesn't make a lot of sense, although I think that's what they've kind of been doing. The other point there is that the worst case scenario is I've got Louie Varland making an extra start instead of Tyler Mahle.
Right, which is not even clear that that's much of a downgrade at all.
It's not clear that that's any
They're
downgrade.
in a very rare position that
it's one thing if you're calling up
Chichi Gonzalez. We always use him as the example. I'm sorry.
Exactly,
but, Andrew Albers or whoever the hell it is, Johan Pino, whoever it is. But as soon as Maeda shows any signs, we were talking about this with the ankle injury a week ago, which is just shut him down and let Ober start, who might be better at this point, honestly. Realistically, even setting aside the injuries, he might just be a better pitcher. And it's the same thing with Mahle and Ober and or Louie Varland, who 90% of Major League teams, Ober would be in the rotation, and probably 80% of Major League teams, Louie Varland would be in the rotation. And for some of those teams, and some recent Twins teams, they'd be like the third starter on some of these teams. These are good, especially in Ober's case, proven middle of the rotation caliber Major League starting pitchers. And I would argue that Louie Varland is not as proven, certainly has shown nothing to suggest he won't be a quality Major League starting pitcher, has made 6 starts. All of them have been 5+ innings and reasonably decent, including 2 at Yankee Stadium.
There's no, you're right. There's just not a lot of downside at all for just being aggressive about getting these guys on the IL and hopefully getting them healthier
I'm poking the bear
Long
by
run, right.
linking these two things back, but it goes back to our stupid discussion at the beginning, which I'm taking full responsibility for. But my point there was, other than just picking on you and being ornery, as I always am, but that individual days off for position players in a 162-game season are such marginal differences that they have really no – like the idea of – Michael Taylor's going to sit and Nick Gordon's going to play is, you're so thinly slicing that it 0.00 runs, and it's the randomness wipes that out anyway. And so extending that, I would say, what is the difference, functionally between a couple of Tyler Mahle starts in late April or early May and a couple of Louie Varland starts in late April and early May? Maybe if you really think highly of one and low of the other, it's, 0.1 runs per start or something like that. And I'm not saying that's not important. Those are the margins that you fight for by platooning, by pinch hitting, by doing moves and all that stuff, choosing the right reliever. But randomness almost takes care of all that anyway. And I think you can make the argument, certainly in the case of Ober and Maeda, that Ober is actually giving them an advantage based compared to a 35-year-old current Maeda. Now it's a moot point because of the injury. And so when I look at the Maeda situation and now what I perceive as coming with the Mahle situation, we'll find out more today because I'm sure he's going to go for an MRI and all that stuff. So they'll maybe have some more details today or tomorrow. But I'm certain that Ober is going to replace Maeda, and I'm pretty confident that Varland is going to replace Mahle.
It does fit just way too well.
And I just think, why avoid that?
Why not just put him on the IL?
Well, yeah, I mean, you can wait a day or two. It's not going to matter, especially with starters. Varland isn't going to be available. And the one tricky thing, which I should clarify, is you might say, well, why not immediately put Maeda on the IL and call up some random reliever so at least you have a fresh arm?
You essentially got a 9-man bullpen for a few days.
You could do that.
Yeah.
But the only way Ober can get back to the majors now, this week, before his 15-day send-down period is if a player goes on the IL and he's the corresponding move. An injury placement wipes away the waiting period to call a guy back up.
Yeah, you've got to spend 10 days in the minors once you're demoted, right?
15, I think. For pitchers, they changed
I don't know.
To try to...
Okay, the same thing as with the IL?
Yeah, to try to stop teams from cycling through. That's why Cole Sands hasn't been up. He's been in the minors for 6 months, it seems like.
All right, okay.
He's eligible tomorrow. But the point there, and the reason that's relevant is, if you were to today, or yesterday even, put Maeda on the IL immediately and call up, whatever reliever you want to call up, long reliever, short reliever, whoever. Then when you need a starter 3 days from now or 4 days from now to replace him in the rotation, you can't call up Ober because Ober's waiting period is not up. He has to be linked to Maeda's going on the IL to call him back up. And the same thing will happen with Mahle and Louie Varland too, because that hasn't been 15 days. It's been close to 15 days.
Close to 15 days.
So, we talk so much all offseason about their rotation depth and the importance of that. And we also have made a running joke over a decade now about the idea that there's no such thing as too much starting pitching depth. And this is such a great example of that.
Right.
They had so much quality depth that everyone agreed on in spring training after making the January trade for Pablo Lopez that it was a foregone conclusion that if no one got hurt in Fort Myers, Bailey Ober was going to start the season in the AAA rotation.
Right.
There's a guy with 30-something major league starts and a 3-something ERA, 26 years old, improving, had a great spring, was probably their best pitcher all spring. But they told him that before he got to camp. Baldelli sat down with him and said, I don't want this to be any confusion. I don't want you to feel like you were misled here. There are 5 guys ahead of you on the rotation depth chart.
Right.
If none of them are hurt, you're the 6th, and we're not keeping you as a long reliever because they think it from a health standpoint, but developmentally they want to keep him starting. And then they have their back-to-back minor league pitcher of the year, who made 5 starts in September and more than held his own in Louie Varland. And he wasn't even in the rotation mix at all.
Right.
He was, you're going to be in the AAA rotation completely, and you probably won't even be the first guy called up when we need help because Bailey Ober's there. And now we didn't even make it through April. And they've dipped into their 6th starter Bailey Ober, and probably their 7th starter, Louie Varland.
And we've also seen Simeon Woods Richardson.
We've also seen Simeon Richardson
throw 97 pitches.
Basically make a start out of the bullpen.
Right.
And so it's not ideal.
And Brent Hedrick also threw about
Brent Hedrick has looked good.
Pitches, right.
But this shows the value of that. And it also shows the value of not trying to map everything out, not saying, well, when is Bailey Ober going to get an opportunity? When is blah, blah, blah? And I think this kind of applies to Alex Kirilloff now, which is in everyone's mind, if Alex Kirilloff is not in the big league lineup next week, he's never going to be in the big league lineup again.
Right.
But it's a very similar situation, which maybe we'll finish up talking about here, which is there are left-handed hitters in front of him on the depth chart at all 3 of the positions he could play, much like there were 5 starters ahead of Bailey Ober in the rotation depth chart. And so he was 6th, but almost immediately he's been needed. And so
you're arguing this is why you don't want to just throw Kepler away because you might need him for the depth. Is what you're
stirring the pot today, John. I wonder sometimes if John sees me walk in and just tells from body language, he's like even ornier?
Or
ornerier. I don't want it to be confused with horny because John ain't getting that look from me. Hopefully, who knows what John's into? And he thinks, But so yeah, just to finish up on the starting pitching, very obviously not a good situation. Right. It sucks for the individual players,
of course,
especially I would say in Maeda's case, who, realistically, he's a smart guy. He's seeing that this potentially could be near the end of the line here if this goes south. And I think that probably plays a part into him fighting to keep pitching because he just missed 2 years. But even with Mahle too, I mean, let's be honest. Mahle is an impending free agent.
Right.
If healthy, he's going to get $100 million. If not healthy, he ain't going to get $30 million. Right. And so it's a crossroads from him. And while he may not be the most forthcoming person talking about his injuries, that doesn't mean emotionally it's not as frustrating for him or he's not as worried about it. And so it sucks for them. It also just sucks for the team to start the season thinking pretty good 7 starters and not even make it through the end of April and say, now we have 5 starters. Right. And the next time someone goes down, it's Brent Hedrick or Simeon Woods Richardson or
Aaron Sanchez
or whoever.
Right.
Now, those guys are not bad 9th, 10th, 11th, whatever starters. They're not even bad 6 starters, but they're not standouts in that role. Right. Whereas Ober is an exceptional 6 starter. Varland is an exceptional 7 starter, except now they're the 4th and 5th starter. Right. But I will say, they're really Ober is an overqualified 4th starter. Right. I think Louie Varland is going to prove to be an overqualified 5th starter. The rotation can still be a major strength for the Twins if you basically have Pablo Lopez, Sonny Gray, and Joe Ryan as your front 3 who have all looked phenomenal this season. Right. We didn't even mention Sonny Gray threw 7 shutout against the Yankees. He looked fantastic, Sonny Gray. And then Bailey Ober as your 4th starter and Louie Varland as your 5th
That's still
starter.
a really strong rotation.
Yes. But you just have lost all your margin for error there.
Right. At that point, once you get past them, it's not clear that everybody is going to be a major league starter, which happens. Right. Like it happens every year that you get guys who aren't
They won't be ready to do that. Now, a year from now,
major league caliber starter, or maybe,
they're bigger risks. They're coin flip starts, as we saw in the past few years.
I would put all 5 of those guys as, average or better.
Yeah,
in terms of starter, right?
I agree.
After that, I don't have the same confidence. I mean, it's not. Listen, you said Hendricks looked good. Simeon Woods Richardson looked, although he has not looked great in St. Paul. But then you're getting to Jose De Leon, you're getting to Aaron Sanchez, you're getting to.
Well, then you're just in the same situation all teams are in, which is their 7th, 8th, 9th starter are kind of a mixed bag.
So what I would argue then is, what you want to do then is lean into that depth now. And use that time to get those guys healthy. Right.
This is the other – I completely agree. I'm glad you made that point, which is even if you do think – and I don't think you can really believe this – but even if you do think the Maeda thing is pretty minor at this point and not a huge cause for concern, maybe I'm just overreacting. And you think the same with Mahle. You agree with Mahle that it's no big deal and he can make his next start and all that.
Give him a month.
Right. Why not shut him down for 15 days and reevaluate precautionarily – I don't even know if that's a word. It's a better word than ornery, whatever. Bushmouth.
They're all better words than that now at this point.
And like you said, lean into the depth that you have available while you have it available. Yeah. And I don't mean that Ober and Varland are going to turn into pumpkins here. But Ober's got injury history of his own.
Sure. Yep.
Varland's got 6 career starts. And right now, Pablo Lopez, Sonny Gray, and Joe Ryan are healthy and clicking and thriving. They can carry a rotation a little bit with the way they're performing. Why not lean into that depth as your 4th and 5th spots while the top 3 are going well so that
You
hopefully...
might be fine if it was Dylan Bundy and Chris Archer in the 4th and 5th spot
let's
right
not
now.
get crazy. They're both available, I think. Chris Archer's definitely available. I think Dylan Bundy
Somebody signed to somebody.
AAA deal with somebody. But okay, one more thing, and then we'll read our last sponsors. But I guess we kind of mentioned this, which is next man up for the rotation after Ober and Varland is probably Hedrick, given that he's been stretched out as a long reliever and he's looked pretty good in a couple of long relief outings. Again, Brent Hedrick as a 5th starter is not the worst thing in the world. You just don't really have a great deal of confidence what you're going to get because you haven't seen it. Then Simeon Woods-Richardson probably after that. Yeah. In part because both Josh Winder and Jordan Balzovic have been shifted to the bullpen, which I have some notes on Winder. We talked to him yesterday. I can maybe fill in some blanks there. But trying to find a silver lining here, so much of this year's rotation, 3/5 of it, is impending free agents. Gray, Mahle, Maeda.
Right.
And the whole question was, well, it's good now, but what do they do next year? Right. What do they do the year after that? Well, now you've got Pablo Lopez signed for 4 years. You have Joe Ryan under team control for that same length. Yep. And now you've added Ober, who, if healthy and pitch like he has, could be a 3+ year starter. Right. And then Louie Varland hasn't even basically started his career yet. And so there is, if these guys hold their own in place of the 2 injured guys, there is sort of a nice bonus, which is you can start to kind of envision what next year's rotation or the 2025 rotation.
The downside is that if Mahle or Maeda don't perform really well, there's no chance of them getting a qualifying offer.
Well, that's true.
Right? Yeah. And so as a result of
that's
that,
probably out the window with Maeda already.
It feels that way for Maeda already. And maybe Mahle.
Okay. Before we talk about Kirilloff and the lineup and a couple of bullpen notes, let's do our last sponsor.
Well, let's talk about trivia.
Yeah, this is a fun one. So our friend and my fellow beat writer on the Twins beat, Do-Hyung Park, 2-time Jeopardy contestant, one of our favorite guests, one of my favorite people. Just a tremendously smart, weird person who is great. Right. He is sort of becoming a trivia guru around town. Yeah. And this is his first hosting thing.
He's going to be the Alex Trebek of it's cheating is trivia for cheaters. Okay, so this event is May 25th from 6 to 9. It's at a brew pub, not brew pub, tap room, La Doña Cerveceria in Minneapolis, which is just west of downtown, maybe
the Twins
half a mile, something like that.
Are off that night.
And the Twins are off that night. And it's a fundraiser. It's for a fundraiser for 826 MSP, which is a nonprofit youth writing center located in South Minneapolis, serving about 1,300 kids every year on a mission to amplify stories and power of K-12 Black, Indigenous, and students of color through writing, publishing, and leadership programs. So they have this big fundraiser. It's a trivia contest, just like other trivia contests.
Here's why it's called Trivia for Cheaters.
Right.
Which is if you don't know the answer to something, you can basically pay money to get the answer.
Right. That's
and then the money that everyone pays to do better in the trivia goes to the charity.
Yeah, you can do things like I'll give an extra $10 to the charity, and that will allow me to, as a result of that, I get to look on my iPhone for 10 minutes for the answer to this or something like this.
Yeah.
Right? I get to make a phone call.
It's pub style trivia, general knowledge, sports, movies, history, all that stuff.
Twins beat writers are participating.
Yeah,
we're going to have at least one team, maybe 2 teams of Twins beat writers.
You can make teams up to 5 players to join in. You can raise money for charity. You can have some fun. You can drink some beers. You can meet John. You can meet Doe. Pose with a pic. I saw the other day somebody posed for a picture with Doe. It was amazing. And
to go there, to sign up for your team and to learn more, you go to 826 MSP. 826msp.org, and you click on the tab for Trivia for Cheaters. And if listeners of Gleeman and the Geek can enter the code Gleeman when registering, and your team gets $250
in cheat cash.
In cheat cash.
I like people using my name to cheat. I like that.
That's right. It's going to be
I've been doing
blast.
That for
I'm
years.
really looking forward to putting our team together.
826msp.org, the Do-Hyung Park hosted trivia.
You can try and take that. What's our names? The
May 25th.
What's our trivia team name? The Scribes, the unwashed stripes. No, what is it?
Something.
Well, whatever the team was.
We won in Fort Myers.
We won several times in Fort Myers. You got to take us down.
But that might have been thanks to the Boston Writers. They kind of stepped up. And our last sponsor is MyBookie, which MLB is back in full swing. MyBookie is going to be your one-stop shop for all your betting needs with a wide range of betting options, including money lines, run totals, futures. MyBookie gives you plenty of ways to bet on your favorite teams and players.
You can also take advantage of a brand new MyBookie Money Bag, which gives you the chance to secure a bet on your favorite team or player at insanely boosted odds. You just sign up today at MyBookie and you use the promo code Gleeman to secure a first deposit bonus of up to $1,000. It's simple. Deposit $200 and play with $300 instantly. Just use the promo code Gleeman to claim your bonus.
So if you're a baseball fan looking to add a little excitement to the season, look no further. MyBookie. Sign up now. Get ready to experience the thrill of baseball betting like never before. Bet anything, anytime, anywhere. MyBookie. Okay. We talked a lot about pitching, so let's, I guess, shift and finish up here.
I would like to hear about Winder.
Okay.
Tell me a little bit about Winder.
Well, Winder was activated from the IL.
I've been puzzled by what they've been doing with him.
And then joined the team yesterday. Right. So we talked to him pregame. He's always pretty good spirits, but he seemed enthusiastic about the move to the bullpen.
Yes.
In kind of both possible ways. One of which is he's just dealt with shoulder problems now for 3 straight years. Right. And it's
at some point, I mean, we fielded a question like this, I think, about on the Patreon about, what happens when a pitcher doesn't want to move to the bullpen, when they want to move a starting pitcher to the bullpen, What happens? And I think this is a pretty good example of how it often goes, which is a lot of times it's moved for health reasons.
Yes.
And at some point, the player's as desperate to just play as they can be, and they recognize themselves, I'm not getting to play. Yeah, trying to be a starter.
Typically, the 2 ways that a starting pitcher or a young starting pitcher prospect gets moved to the bullpen are health, in that they just can't stay healthy or haven't been able to stay healthy from a durability standpoint as with a starter routine and workload, or performance, or it can be both. But in both cases, it might take a while, not with Josh Winder, but just in general, for the pitcher to kind of give up what the initial plan was in their head. I'm going to be a major league starter.
Or they take a look at their ceiling is not going to be what they thought it was going to be.
Or they're spending time on the IL and they're seeing their similar prospects, or younger prospects pass them up, which is the case of Josh Winder.
Right.
Like Josh Winder's been sitting on the IL for most of the past year.
Varland has passed him. He was in Varland's spot last year. Right?
So, but he seemed in good spirits. He was glad to be obviously back in the majors. He kind of talked 2 ways about it. One is he said, I've had a lot of shoulder problems and I've had to kind of try to adjust my routine and do exercises and strengthening to combat it. And yet, as a starter, I go out there and I throw 5 innings or whatever, 75 pitches. And then like for 2 or 3 days afterward, I feel terrible. And he said, I haven't been a reliever for that long, but even rehabbing this injury as a reliever, which he has been in the minors, recently with St. Paul, he threw 3 innings, 35 pitches the other day. He said, there's none of that. I throw a couple of innings, and, I ice my arm and all that, but it's not 72 hours of, oh, my God, I feel terrible.
That's a whole other aspect I hadn't really thought about. Not just, watching your career kind of miss you, but just the fact that, I also get to spend that time in physical pain.
Right. And it's not, maybe not excruciating pain, but, starters do have an entire routine, even if they're healthy. The day after, they're going for this therapy, or they're wrapping their shoulder, or they're going for ice, or they're getting a massage. And then the day after that, they're hoping that they feel good enough to throw off flat ground. And then 3 days after that, you throw a bullpen. There's this whole routine to keep you able to throw 90 pitches every 5 days. And throwing, I think he's going to initially start out in more of a, I don't want to say long relief, but multi-inning relief.
He's taking the long relief spot on the roster.
I don't know that he's going to throw like 4 or 5 innings like Hedrick.
But I don't see another long reliever on the roster.
I think it'll be 2 or 3 innings, which is kind of how they've been using him on the rehab assignment. So, 30 to 50 pitches, something like that.
That's what kind of interested
me.
And
the bounce back from that is just going to be different than the bounce back for twice that much work. And then beyond that, I asked him from like a pitch mix standpoint, does moving to the bullpen, because he throws 4 pitches essentially, but his slider is probably his best pitch, and he throws a mid-90s fastball, but it's not had a ton of success as a starter. So if he's purely a reliever,
right.
and you just said, what do you think he'll throw as a reliever? I would say eventually he'll settle on fastball slider.
Right.
And the fastball you hope be 97 instead of 95, and the slider, he can throw it 50% of the time instead of 30% of the time. Just the sort of the pitch mix required in a reliever is just much different than it is in a starter. You're only going through the lineup once. You can do max effort, all that stuff. But he said basically, I'm so new to relieving, and I'm still kind of feeling my way out. Am I going to be a long reliever? Am I going to be a short reliever? Am I going to, all this stuff? And I'm still rehabbing the injury, by the way, until a couple days ago. That he said, as far as I know, the plan is for me to still have the 4-pitch mix. Now, matchup-wise or just feel of the game-wise, maybe after a couple weeks of relieving, you can look at my numbers and see, he has amped up the slider and tailed down the changeup or whatever. But it's not a situation that you see with some relievers where they go, you're moving from the rotation to the bullpen a limit, like with Griffin Jax.
Right.
You're going to become a reliever. Now you're fastball slider and the occasional changeup. At least initially here, and in part because he's going to be a multi-inning reliever, I think he's going to continue with the same mix. But I get the sense he's curious, and like Baldelli and the Twins are curious to see, will there be a Griffin Jax style effect or a Glenn Perkins style effect where all of a sudden he's added 1.5 miles to his fastball, or the slider's got a little bit more bite, whether it's in game or because of the recovery aspect that we just talked about. So
there's a lot of listen. I'm excited to see him back here.
Yeah,
I'm excited. I'm interested to see what happens. I'm glad I kind of get to see it live because it's happening here as opposed to St. Paul.
Yeah,
but I'm puzzled by this. Like, on the one hand, it means you're getting rid of I think you're more or less getting rid of the long relief role for a while, which is fine. They can do that, right?
I mean, he's still going to, he'll throw 2 or 3 innings.
Yeah, he'll throw, but I think his high in pitches in St. Paul was like 36.
Well,
yeah,
but he was
right?
on the rehab.
Right, exactly, right. I'm surprised that they're not working out, okay, here's what your pitch mix should be, here's what your velocity is going to be and stuff. That stuff at St. Paul as opposed to doing it here in the majors.
Well, they also just needed a fresh arm.
Well, I mean,
half the guys weren't eligible to be called up.
Well, that's what I'm wondering. Is
Hedrick, Sands, etc., Simeon Woods Richardson, they had been sent down to recently to be called back up.
Is he up here? That was kind of what I'm thinking about. It's like I haven't taken a look at when everybody was sent down, when they're thinking who's on the 40-man roster and who's not. Is it just sort of like, well, we've got a guy on the 40-man roster and he's healthy-ish.
He was nearing the end of the window for rehab, so you were either going to have to put him on the major league roster or option him to AAA. Right. Here's what I'll say. I'm not suggesting that he's like locked into a bullpen spot. I actually think there's a decent chance he just gets kind of thrown into the mix with all these guys we just mentioned.
Right.
Simeon Richardson, Hedrick, Sands, etc., which is he'll stay up for a week or two, and depending how many innings he throws or how often he's needed to mop up or long relief, he'll get optioned to AAA just as these guys have, and then the next guy will come up. Yeah. So I think it's likely. Now, he can pitch his way into a permanent spot, obviously. He's got more upside as a reliever than all those guys.
Absolutely.
But, he's got more experience in the majors, too, so far, even though he's been injured. But it wouldn't surprise me if he's just one more name added to the revolving door for that last bullpen spot, basically.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. But I would rather have if there was a guy who's available who can throw 60 pitches or 80 pitches, because we've got now we've got 3 fairly reliable starters coming up the next 3 days. So maybe they sort through that on the off day on Monday. I don't know.
Okay, let's talk about some hitters here. Like we talked about at the very beginning, the lineup is actually showing some signs of life.
Yeah.
Buxton, aside from that 0 for 15 or whatever he was after he had the collision against the White Sox, has been phenomenal before that and now phenomenal since then. A number of, almost every extra base hit he's had this year has been a huge one. He hit 3 homer last night to right center, which you do not see from right-handed hitters very often at Target Field. Off Greinke.
That was a blast.
Glenn Perkins said post-game to Baldelli, did you know Byron had that in his bag? And he could do that? Right. And Baldelli said, Byron's got everything in his bag.
Oh, yeah. I think, I was trying to remember. One Sunday game last year, he talked about Buxton taking a pitch to the right field deck there in the middle innings versus hard lefty with splits or something. I think it was the White Sox game, so he definitely had that in his bag. I'm sorry. The Twins have. I think this time last week we were talking about how the Twins were 12th or 13th in runs scored.
They're like
in the
basically
American League.
average.
They're
now.
basically average right now. Yeah, they're basically have American League average. So
they have a
99
99 OPS plus, which 100 is average. So they're
right.
a double away from being average essentially.
Right. Yep.
Buxton has been coming up huge. Obviously, the Polanco return has been massive.
Unbelievable.
For him to step back in after 9 months on the sidelines and a setback during spring training and, years of ankle and now knee problems and, just
it's
hitting for power, hitting singles, clutch, looking to me at least decent defensively.
Yeah.
Making a great play on that Aaron Judge ball that we talked about earlier. And also just the added dynamic of a switch hitter who can bat, fifth, third, first, if they want, second. It adds a left-handed bat, but also now, as we've seen, he's looked more dangerous than almost ever from the right side, which is usually his much, much weaker side. And most of his big hits so far in the first week back have been from the right side. Now, he got yesterday off because he played like 5 or 6 games in a row. That's going to be part of the plan. But, I mean, it's part of the reason. I always say he's probably the most underrated Twin of the last 10 years, and yet I find myself underrating him. Because here I am sitting here after watching him for a week make a huge impact and say, can you believe the impact he made? Well, yeah, we should have figured, but there was always the health question with him, which is, are we getting a healthy Polanco, or are we similar to the Maeda talk?
We've seen him go both ways.
Right. Are we just getting Polanco who wants to play?
Right, yeah,
which is an issue with Polanco.
I mean, it's anytime you add a guy to the lineup and he posts 1,000 OPS in a week, it doesn't really matter. That's going to be a real benefit to the lineup. But
and they did that with Polanco and Gallo sort of at the same time.
You're right.
Coming off the IL.
So I mean that might be enough to say that's kind of what's carrying the lineup right now. I think it kind of is what's carrying the lineup. But beyond that, I also just love Polanco's style in this lineup. He is not a swing for the fences kind of guy. Twins have a lot of home run hitters.
Yeah.
They have a lot of slugger types. Buxton is a slugger type. Gallo is a slugger type.
He's a gap to gap.
He is a tough at bat.
He's a switch. Yeah, and
he might be the toughest at bat on this team.
He's definitely late in his career. Not late, but he's in his 20s still. But like early on, he had a very aggressive plate approach of a young hitter. But last year, he led the team in walks. He had like 65 walks, and he only played like 105 games last year. Like he's and he's never been a high strikeout guy, but he's completely changed his kind of plate discipline and, doesn't strike out a ton, but does have 20 homer power, hits a lot of gappers, and then, gap to gap, but also just being able to hit from both sides of the plate, the way Baldoli likes to put up a lineup, which he loves to alternate left, right. Well, this opens up all kinds of possibilities there because no matter who is batting before or after Polanco, you're alternating because he's a switch hitter. That's the beauty of a switch hitter.
I mean, he seems to have altered his style to almost be a little more Luis Ariz-ish, which is something that felt like we were missing in the first few weeks, partly because we just plain missed Luis Ariz, but also just because it felt like we were,
the quality of the at-bats was not there early in the season.
Except that he can also do it now right-handed versus left-handed pitchers, which Ariz could never really do.
I'm very curious to see if that sustains. He might have just had 10 good at-bats right-handed. But, I mean, if he's done something or he just feels healthier than he has for a while maybe, and he's an impact hitter from the right side, we know he's an impact hitter from the left side, so that could change a whole lot. The only real missing hitter at this point, like Royce Lewis and all that. But like the only guy who was in the mix for an opening day spot at any point is Kirilloff. And Kirilloff, like Winder and like Polanco, has been rehabbing at St. Paul. His window for that, which for position players is 20 days, it's 30 days for pitchers, is up very shortly, within days. I forget the actual. It's this weekend.
I think it's May 1st.
Yeah. So that means
Monday.
Once that window closes, he can no longer remain on the rehab assignment unless it's determined that he's suffered a setback or needs more time, which the player has to sign off on. Similar to Winder, once you reach the end of that window, there are two things that can happen. With a veteran player like Polanco, the only choice is you activate them or you release them.
Right.
They weren't going to release them, obviously. With a player who has options remaining, Winder, Kirilloff, etc., the two choices you have are you need to activate them from the injured list and end their rehab assignment. You can either do that by placing them on the Major League active roster, 26-man roster, or you can just send them via option to AAA, in which case they're no longer an injured player, they're no longer a rehabbing player, they're no longer a major leaguer sent to AAA, they're just a AAA player.
They just use an option year.
Right.
That's
which the Twins did with Kirilloff last season, too. He spent some time in the majors, he rehabbed, and then they sent him to AAA because they weren't sure where he was at physically, and he was AAA player of the year, player of the month for a month, and they called him back up and his wrist hurt again. So everything I've been told from the Twins, and we talked about this 5 days ago. I wrote it as a more formal report on Friday or whatever it was. Everything I've been told from multiple Twin sources is they're leaning towards, if nothing changes in terms of injuries to other major leaguers, which why would we ever assume that'll be the case? But once he's activated from the injured list, he's more likely to be optioned to AAA than he is to be brought back to the Major League roster immediately. And part of me thinks that's a mistake because, A, if he's reasonably healthy, and by the way, he's been crushing the ball at AAA. Yeah. Multiple homer games. I think he's got 4 or 5 homers in 8 games overall or something like that. I want to see it. I mean, he really has the potential to be great, and I also want to see, is that still exist in him, or have the wrist problems kind of sapped that from him?
He has a 1326 OPS at AAA.
Right.
Now.
I mean, he's been crushing the ball. Now,
he's slugging 826.
What I will caution there is he has not played back-to-back games.
Not many.
Almost at all.
Yeah, only twice.
And often he's been removed after 6 or 7 innings.
Yeah.
So the idea that they
are being careful with him.
Right.
Right.
And, it's not just being careful, but his performance, if they really think being careful is necessary, would suffer if he played back-to-back games. Now, his per-game numbers or his overall numbers are great, but if he'd have played 3 more games or 4 more games in there without rest, maybe he has a 600 slugging percentage instead of a billion slugging percentage or whatever. But the bigger issue with him is the same one with Ober, like we hinted at earlier, which is he plays 3 positions. He's a left-handed hitter, and he plays 3 positions potentially. First base, which is where they'd prefer to play him, is manned by Joey Gallo, who's been one of the Twins' best players and has been fantastic at first base. Left field, which is probably the second place they'd like to play him, is manned by a very similar player in Trevor Larnach, who's a little bit older and has a little bit more success in the majors, but is also a former first-round pick and has also had some injury problems and has gone through slumps and highs and lows, but for the most part has been pretty decent this year.
Yeah, he's been all right.
And he's a better defender than Alex Kirilloff in left field, in my opinion at least. And then the third spot that they might play him is right field. And this is where it gets a little trickier, which is Max Kepler has been the Twins right fielder for, 7 years now. I thought he was going to get traded this offseason. I thought they would have been smart to trade him this offseason, almost regardless of what they got back other than shedding his salary. If you can get something for him, even better. In part because I thought you want to make room for Larnach. You want to make room for Kirilloff. You want to make room for Matt Wallner. But they did not do that. And they continue. He batted 8th last night, but they've been batting him leadoff and 4th, and he plays essentially every day against righties. So that's also blocking Kirilloff. So the 3 spots he could play are not only filled, they're filled by left-handed hitters.
Right.
One of them, Gallo, ain't going anywhere. One of them, Larnach, is a young player or a untested player who's every bit as deserving of an opportunity to play every day.
Right.
And then the other one is a guy that, for better or worse, the Twins just cannot break up with, basically.
I think we've got a story coming out. I think it's today by Lou Hennessy saying Max Kepler and the Twins feel like it's a long Minnesota goodbye.
Yeah.
It's just you just got to figure out some way what is going to happen here. I don't know.
Now, I had this discussion with somebody at Target Field yesterday, so I'll do a quick version of it, which is my thoughts on Kepler at this point are pretty well known, and I think you're sort of and agree with me on Kepler, but that we would have parted ways.
Well, I probably would have parted ways in the
other.
offseason.
Right.
But given the fact that he's on the team now and what you've got, I don't know that I'm anxious to get rid of him yet.
Right.
I'm fine with Kirilloff spending a little more time in AAA.
Right. I don't think that's like the end of the world or anything. But what I will say is I think this is slightly different than a typical situation in that, similar to Ober and Varland, it's unique to have a guy like Ober and Varland at AAA as major league caliber starters that are blocked by 5 starters, because most of the time the guy you might have one guy like that blocked, or you might have a double A like that. But it's similar with Kirilloff and Wallner now. They have 2 guys who are kind of chomping at the bit to potentially be long-term guys. Now they have questions to answer, health-wise for Kirilloff, strikeout-wise for Wallner.
Right.
But you can't answer those questions just at AAA. You just can't. I mean, you could maybe answer the health question from a negative standpoint with Kirilloff if he re-injures his wrist or something like that. But so I view it a little bit differently than I might under just sort of typical situation, which it's not uncommon for a good young player to be in the minors and to be blocked by a player at his position. But I think it's uncommon to have 2 such players both crushing the ball at AAA, which Wallner is crushing the ball at AAA.
Right.
And was their minor league player of the year last year.
Yeah, he's
by
got
the
a
way.
900 OPS or something like that. Right.
And both of those guys are major league ready. They're both crushing at AAA.
Yeah.
And you have Max Kepler, who has not been an above-average hitter for 4 years now. He's a good defender. He's not a horrible hitter. But I just think
he's been pretty good since he came back from the injury a little bit. He's been fine.
Yeah. OPS plus is still below 100.
Oh, yeah.
Though. But I mean, it's been for 3 years.
He's been a below average hitter this year.
It's one thing if you have one pretty good prospect at AAA and you think, I'm not going to ditch the mediocre veteran we have. We trust him. Right. We believe in him. We think there's more upside. But I think to me at least, it's a slightly different scenario where you have 2 potentially really good hitters at AAA, both of whom have knocked the shit out of AAA pitching now last year and this year. Both of whom are not 21 anymore.
Right.
And Kirilloff has played in the majors. Wallner's got 100 at-bats in the majors at this point. And so it's not just Kepler kind of holding off one prospect.
Right.
It's Kepler holding off or blocking 2 guys who need to play at some point here or just aren't going to be part of your plans. And so that's where I kind of view this situation. And would I dump Kepler now? Well,
yeah, here's
no,
the thing.
but I would have dumped him this offseason.
You don't have to decide now who you're playing for the next 5 months. You have to decide now who you're playing tomorrow or who's on the roster next week, right? I'm perfectly okay with saying we're going to have Kirilloff spend some more time until the point where we feel where he's comfortable being an everyday player.
Right.
You know, we feel enough confidence in his wrist to be an everyday player. Now, I'd actually and that might be mid-May, it might be end of May, and then we're just going to have to evaluate where the hell Kepler is at.
Yeah.
And
it might be never, by the way.
Right.
Like,
well, it could be.
That's also a possibility.
That's also a possibility. That's a good point.
But within that, I do think there's a sort of using up your bullets standpoint.
Maybe.
Which is you think, how many swings do you want him, how many at-bats do you want him taking with his wrist in a AAA environment where it's really meaningless?
Yeah, could be. I mean, it could be that that's the way it works. It could also be that it gains strength every time that it's happening.
That's obviously the hope. Yeah.
On the other hand, the fact that he might need frequent rest does provide sort of a unique opportunity, because the problem with finding him room on the Twins isn't finding him a roster space. We've got Willie Castro just sitting there doing,
Sure.
Right? But the problem with having him on the roster is finding him at bats, because as you mentioned, you're giving all these bats to these other guys.
Right.
Well, it becomes a little bit easier to say, well, we only want this guy taking bats mostly every other day while we get the wrist right. That means that every other day, one of those 3 guys is going to rest, Gallo or right. So basically, all 3 of them are playing 5 out of 6 games.
Or, by the way, you could play Gallo or Kepler in center field once a week.
Well, that's true too
against a right-handed
that's
pitcher
another good
and
point.
sit Michael Taylor.
I've wondered if we would see that a couple different times.
Yeah, I agree with all that. I don't know. It's something that was often a talking point with the previous regime, especially early in the Gardy days, where they would develop so much good young talent, especially from the position player side, but also even going back to like Jose Barrios and they would just go out of their way to sign, Juan Castro instead of handing the shortstop job to Jason Bartlett or Sidney Ponson.
It feels a little like
and
that.
I'm not saying Kepler is at that level. But what I am saying is it should be abundantly clear to even the biggest Max Kepler fans, if such a thing exists at this point, that he is no longer part of their long-term plan.
Yeah.
And then the question becomes, similar to what we talked about with Maeda even 3 weeks ago, once a player is no longer part of your long-term plans, the way you evaluate them in the short term should change because there doesn't need to be as much leeway given or as much, he's struggling now, but he's still going to be with us 3 years from now. So we want to keep investing. It's like, how many more quarters do you want to put into this machine to try to get to some end point where you're not going to get to the final boss?
Right, yeah.
Like, you know what I mean? Like,
you're going to get to the point where you break even on the
right,
slots.
sort of.
Right,
and so, it's not a scenario where you can cut. You could trade Kepler, but trading him in April or May is going to be very strange. Yeah. And it would be an admission that they should have traded him this offseason, certainly. Yeah. And so I'm not here stumping for that. And there are questions to answer with.
I'd also suggest there's a much worse market for him now than there used to be, in part not necessarily because of his performance, but because those teams that
the needs have been filled.
They've been filled, or they're taking a look at the White Sox. I'm trying to think of a team that needs a left fielder, the Marlins or something. That maybe was looking at somebody like that, are like, yeah, we know where we're going to be now. Do we really want to spend $8 million to plug right field when we, aren't necessarily in this thing?
By the way, the $8 million doesn't do the Twins any good now.
Right. Exactly.
In November, they could have turned around and spent that money on something else. Right. But so yeah, I think that's the scenario that Kirilloff is looking at, and to a lesser extent, Wallner is looking at, because now he's in the Louie Wallner is in the Louie Varland spot, the two Minnesota boys, which is like he's the seventh starter,
right?
You know what I mean?
Right. Yeah.
So he needs someone to go so that Kirilloff can get called up,
second guy on the bench,
right? Yeah, so that's a very tricky spot for a 25-year-old reigning minor league player of the year to be in. So I don't
both of them.
Let's just finish with a quick thing on Brock Stewart. Who is a good story.
Yes.
Brock Stewart was a good but not elite starter prospect for the Dodgers like 8 years ago, let's say. And got to the majors and didn't have a lot of success, but, pitched 100 and something innings for the Dodgers over 3 different years or something like that. He was kind of a typical starter, low 90s, a couple good breaking balls, but he got knocked around for the most part. Right. Then he blew out his arm, and he had Tommy John surgery. And then after missing, a year and a half, 2 years, his comeback from Tommy John surgery was halted because he had bone spurs in the same elbow. Right. And he had another surgery to remove the debris, basically, from that elbow, which caused him more time on the sidelines. So 2 years ago, or an offseason and a half ago, the Twins signed him to, which is relatively rare, a 2-year minor league contract.
Right.
Which is often given to players who are rehabbing injuries. They kind of did that with Maeda with a major league contract 4 years ago or 6 years ago. The idea is, we know you're not ready to go yet, but we like your upside, and we feel like if we can get you under our tent here and work with you from a physical standpoint, we can get you healthy, but we don't want to do that for 1 year. Because if we get you healthy and we get you throwing as well as you ever have, we don't want you then going to sign with some other team.
Correct.
So you sign him to a 2-year minor league contract. You guarantee him more money than a typical contract. And it's worked out brilliantly exactly how they could have planned, which is he spent last year kind of getting right physically. He pitched a little bit in the minors but wasn't particularly good. And then this year, even in spring training, people were talking about him as like, keep an eye on this guy. Because instead of throwing 91, 92 as a starter with the Dodgers, he was pretty consistent, like 96 to 98 in spring training.
Right.
His spring training performance was good. He didn't make the team out of spring training, which is understandable.
Right.
And then he went to AAA, and I think he had like a 17-2 strikeout to walk ratio in like 10 innings or something like that. And all the reports that they said they got on him were 95 plus consistently with the fastball, good sweeper, throwing strikes, which had been a problem for him before some of the injuries. And so he gets called up, and he makes his Twins debut last night. He pitched 2 scoreless. I think he gave up 1 hit or something like that. 30 pitches roughly.
But
average
fastball,
fastball, 96.
Yep.
He got 9 swings and misses out of 17 swings, many of them with off-speed stuff.
Right.
And afterward,
he looked legit.
It was great to talk to him afterward because he was basically like, I'm going to be honest, I almost gave up.
Of course.
This
is a guy who spent 3-4 years in the majors, struggling. As one of the same kind of guys we're kind of talking about, bouncing back and forth. Right. Last guy in the bullpen. They're trying to get something for what they thought he was going to be. Never really got there. Then he ends up getting hurt. He was 24 years old when he hit the majors. He was 27 years old the last time he played in the majors. He's 31 years old now.
Right. It's his first game since 2019 in the majors.
Between 27 and 31, there's a lot of opportunities to give up, and
especially when you've spent most of that time rehabbing.
Exactly right.
Significant injuries.
I was so excited to see him make the
and as Baldelli
make that start, and I was really excited to see him succeed. In part because I really wanted to see him have a good outing. Like I just thought, I just want to see that story, but also because that they could add a really important fifth arm to this bullpen.
The quote afterward about Baldelli. It was weird because like most of the postgame was about Mahle, and then someone was like, "Well, Brock Stewart looked pretty good, right?"
Yeah.
And here's a quote from Baldelli. He said, "Our guys who watched him throw at the AAA level were very, very pleased. He's been pretty dominant there. He came up here and has done more of the same. His stuff looked pretty nasty, so it's nice to add an arm like that to our bullpen." And right after sending down Jorge Alcala like a week ago because he just didn't look quite right coming back from his own elbow problems, they were kind of short. I mean, we talked about this all offseason, how they were, in my opinion, short one reliable, high-ish upside right-handed arm. And obviously they were banking on Alcala and or Pagan being that. And right now, neither of them look like that.
Right,
Well, Moran ain't right-handed.
Oh, I'm sorry, right.
Functionally,
he is right-handed. He is.
I'm not, telling you to buy all the Brock Stewart stock after 2 innings.
Sure.
And he's got a lot of elbow problems in his past and not much success in the majors.
But this wasn't just a throwaway appearance. Yeah, this meant something.
Even, like we just talked about how Winder might be joining kind of the revolving door of long relief. So when Stewart got called up 2 days ago from the minors, somebody asked Baldelli, "What's the role that you envision for him?" Right. And a lot of times Baldelli will just say, "Yeah, I don't know. We'll get him in a game and we'll see how it looks." And that's his way of saying, it's not going to be high leverage. We'll see how he, where we can fit him in where it doesn't matter that much.
Right.
He didn't say that with Brock Stewart. He said, he's not going to be one of our top 4 guys here. That's still going to be Duran and Lopez and et cetera. But we're going to try to find spots.
That's what he's trying to be.
To fit him into what they wanted, like Pagan Alcala to be, which is like 6th inning, 2-run game, 7th inning, 3-run game either way, 10th inning tie game after you've used your quality relievers. Like he can be the 5th guy in an 8-man bullpen, which as we've seen last year and already this year, that guy gets into spots that matter a lot.
Also, it provides some depth to the front 4.
Right.
When Griffin Jacks isn't being quite as dominant as you want, or Duran has to disappear for a day because he's got to go take care of immigration issues or whatever, right? You've now got one more arm down there to handle the 6th inning that you didn't have before.
Right. And the hope is, he got added to the 40-man roster and the spot was cleared by designating for assignment Trevor McGill.
Right.
From a stuff standpoint, they're pretty similar.
Yeah, right.
From a ability to turn that stuff into performance standpoint, the hope is that they're much different.
Right.
I don't want to be too harsh on Trevor McGill, but the cliche about, $1 million arm, 10-cent head is unfortunately kind of what his career has played out. He had a job, an opening day job. He spent almost all of last year
on the roster
in the Twins bullpen. And if he would have just had a normal, mediocre spring training, I believe he would have been on the opening day roster as this role that we're kind of talking about, 6th or 7th inning role. Instead, he was horrible immediately in spring training. The Twins felt he didn't handle that particularly well, just this situation of being asked to pitch on the road or being asked to pitch in the 6th inning and then struggling. So they didn't put him on the opening day roster, which he wasn't pleased about. And then they sent his ass to AAA, and he got just absolutely smoked. 14 runs in 10 innings to an embarrassing level. He almost forced their hand.
And it's not like his velocity was down.
No, he still throws 100 or whatever. So the hope is that Brock Stewart has the stuff of a Pagan or a Trevor McGill or a healthy Alcala, but gives them another
maybe a little different perspective on what it means to have a major league career.
These guys necessarily because maybe McGill a little bit, but everyone else I'm not trying to rip at all. But the hope is basically now you have one more of those that you can kind of see if they stick.
Yeah.
And
well, that's what
especially with the bullpen.
Right.
I mean, look what Griffin Jacks has become. Or look, I mean, any number of guys in the bullpen.
Yeah.
It doesn't take a big lead up or lots of planning for a guy like Brock Stewart to have a good month in the majors and then just be part of the late inning mix.
Right.
Like you don't need a formal invitation.
Right.
You don't need to save the date.
Right.
You don't need 2 years in the making with relief pitchers, especially guys who throw 97.
Right.
It's let's give him a chance. Ooh, he looks good. Wow, he's thrown 9 good innings. He's pitching the 7th.
Gets a little bit more now, yeah.
And they could desperately need that from a depth standpoint.
They've got a number of guys like that look like they can have some upside now, sitting in the 5, 6, 7 spot.
Right.
Stewart, Moran, and now Winder to some extent.
Right.
Yeah.
Agreed. Okay.
And of course, Pagan.
I had other notes. Kyle Farmer is looking good. Been working out. I would not be shocked if he begins a rehab assignment within the next week or so.
That's awesome.
Which is good, just to see him up and around, and got a busted lip now. But unless you tell him to open his mouth wide, which we did, and it was kind of scary. But unless you do that, he looks and sounds normal.
Every time you talk about his mouth, I get a little shivers.
Yeah. I wish you got to see the picture that they showed us.
I don't want
you
to see
throw
it.
up on your shoes.
I don't want to see
it. Really was. It determined for me who's the squeamish in the beat writing group, because a couple of us were like, "Ooh, that's gnarly," and a couple of us were like, "What? Why'd you show me that? Like, what?
What's the matter with you?"
And then at least one of us was like, "Open your mouth now. Let's see what it looks like." And he did. The White Sox, complete free fall.
My God.
As of this morning, they've lost 8 in a row.
Yeah.
It was so bad. I don't know if you saw this last night. It got so bad for them last night. They were playing the Rays, who are destroying everyone.
The Rays put in a
The
position
Rays
player
were
to pitch.
winning by so much that they put in a position player. And you might be
Right.
saying position players pitch all the time.
Not for the winning team, no.
I can only remember once the Dodgers did this like 3 years ago. They were up like 14 runs, and Dave Roberts put in, I think, Kike Hernandez to pitch.
Yeah.
But when you're the losing team and you're down 10 runs and you put a position, you're
There's
waving
no
the white
downside,
flag.
right.
There's no down. I mean, it's embarrassing.
Right.
But if you're the winning, like imagine Baldelli in a game the Twins were up like 14-3, puts in like Willie Castro or Nick Gordon to pitch, and they give up a grand slam and put 3 guys on, and you got to warm up Duran then.
Right.
Even if you don't blow the lead, which becomes possible. If you blow the lead, it's catastrophic.
Right.
But just if you force a good reliever to come into the game and not be available the next day, you just get ripped to shreds. And Tampa Bay was up 14-3 on the White Sox and put in Luke Raley, who people may remember from the Bruce Dargretto, Kenta Maeda trade, and actually the Brian Dozier trade.
Right,
He was traded twice
right.
from Dodgers to Twins. He mopped up. He gave up 2 runs, so the White Sox closed the gap to 14-5 for their 8th consecutive loss. They are now 7-19.
Yeah.
And I will say what I said to someone yesterday in the press box, which is they ain't coming back from that. 7-19. I'm not saying everything that happens in April rules out success for the rest of the season, but it's not like they were projected to be particularly great anyway.
Did you see the radio clip I put out there? Did you listen to it?
Of a caller to it was the ESPN affiliate in Chicago.
ESPN affiliate in Chicago.
Yeah, it was like
First of all, it goes on like 6 minutes, 7 minutes. It goes on forever, right? And you get to watch the DJs, or the hosts, I guess. Yeah,
You're
right.
one. You should know what they're called.
I know what they're called. Hosts listen to it, and they are both just leaning back and laughing because this guy's so dead on destroying the White Sox and that organization and so on that they are purposely not interrupting. They're purposely not trying to engage. They're just letting this guy go.
Which I can tell you, as people have been on radio and have occasionally done shows where you take calls.
Right.
In the back of your mind, you're always ready to dump the caller if they just drone on too long. And they were just like, let him go. He's just getting started.
You can see them looking at each other like, we're stepping back.
Tweeted out the link.
His show now.
You should, if you want to watch it, go to @TwinsGeek on Twitter. I don't normally recommend that, but and so this morning, first of all, our poor White Sox writer James Fegan, who does a really good job for The Athletic, has just been. I could tell like the downfall of his mental state on Twitter after all these games. It's like, they lost again. Here we go. But he wrote this morning kind of talking about the front office, that the front office is inevitably probably going to take the heat for this. But even if you fire the GM, Rick Hahn, who's been there forever, that doesn't mean there's suddenly hope around the way. Like, this is not a roster that necessarily is going to be better looking next year.
Right.
It's a roster that was supposed to be good for the past 3 or 5 years.
You're also still going to have Reinsdorf as your owner.
Oh, that's true too. And also this morning, Ken Rosenthal put out an article, which I read right before I headed over here when I woke up this morning, which was, here are the White Sox trade possibilities because this thing is cooked. And you don't see that a whole lot in April.
Right.
Here are the trade deadline moves here are their impending free agents. Here are their guys with 1 year left. Here are their, Dylan Cease they could trade if they really want to make a splash. And I just thought this division every year is so incredible.
Yeah.
Twins are 15-11 and it feels like they're 25 and 10 or something
does.
like that.
You're
Cleveland's still.
Right.
I'm a believer in Cleveland still.
I am too.
All right, that's good.
right.
Drew Maggi made the majors.
I know.
And finally got
That's
into
good to see it.
which was good to see. All right, we'll be back
Monday to wrap up the Royals series.
on the Patreon side.
Yes.
We will, either way, one way or the other, have more meaningful updates on Maeda and Mahle and Varland and Ober and the roster and what the plan is going forward with the rotation, especially. So if you want to join our Patreon shows, which we typically do a Monday show and then a Wednesday show,
we would love to have you.
Patreon.
This is going to be a fun year to join us. I mean, if the Yankees series didn't make that clear to you, there's going to be a fun season to pay an extra $1 or $2 a week and enjoy the Twins.
Patreon. Patreon.com/Gleeman is what you want to do.
Thank you to our sponsors, MyBookie, also to 88826 MSP. Come play trivia with us. BetterHelp. Game Time. Use that app to get some tickets this weekend. Soda Stick. And then Grody Beef. Make sure that you go sign up at GrodyBeef.com for that meat raffle.
Thank you to John. Don't ever bring up days off again in the first minute of a podcast.
It's going to happen every time.
You've got to know better than that, John. You just got to know better.
Talk to you later. Bye.
Gleeman